the topic here today, which is dementia conversations. And we're very proud to give this presentation here today with a wonderful member of the Alzheimer's Association outreach team. So really, this presentation is in partnership with the Alzheimer's Association. Just a reminder, if you haven't already, subscribe to our Gilfix Law YouTube channel. We're putting a lot of free educational content there, really useful information. We want to empower you with knowledge. And today's topic is just so critical. Again, if you have a parent, a grandparent, or if you yourself face memory or dementia issues, or you just don't know how to start talking about it, what to do, that's what this talk is about. These are going to be incredibly impactful slides and information. So take notes, and there are some amazing resources we're going to go through. And we know that when you or a loved one faces memory or dementia issues, it can be incredibly scary and very hard to talk about, let alone plan for it. People feel overwhelmed and they don't know where to start. And this is very personal to us, as I'm going to talk about in just a moment. And we and the Alzheimer's Association, we at Gilfix and the Poll Associates and the Alzheimer's Association, we're here to help on different parts of the puzzle that you need to put together. And before we dive in, I want to just tell a story of my grandmother, Michael Gilfix's mother, Sylvia Gilfix. So this is Sylvia in her prime. Sylvia immigrated as a child from Eastern Europe. I think it was Russia, Soviet Union, and ended up in East Tawas, Michigan, where she raised my father, Michael Gilfix, and my uncle, Gil Gilfix. And wonderful mother. That both Mike and Gil went on to thriving lives and families and careers and eventually moved out to California. Sylvia, my grandmother, followed them to California. She lived in Cupertino in her own condo. And as a child, we would visit her every week, every Sunday. And here's a photo on the left. That's me, bottom left, and bottom right is my sister Shauna, my mom Myra, and my other grandfather. So Sylvia is the top right center. That's Sylvia. So she always had a good tan. We go over to her house every Sunday. I get to have SpaghettiOs with meatballs as like my favorite meal. Of course, canned spaghetti, what's not to like? We get candy. We get to watch Fraggle Rock at her house. It was always such a joyful thing to see Grandma Sylvia. There's another photo on the right of her with my sister Shauna and my mom. It was a wonderful time that we had as children, just getting to know her. And she was a doting, loving, amazing grandmother. And after a while, as a kid, I just noticed that she did start to forget things. And she eventually had to move from her condo to a more supportive community. I remember that because instead of getting Chinese food when we visit her, we started to get Little Caesars pizza. So it was always a treat to see her still, even when she moved from her condo to the other place. But then over time, we noticed that she was slipping more and more, and she was forgetting more and more. And eventually, it became clear that she had dementia. And as a kid, all I saw was she was forgetting more and more about us, and we had to remind her of things. And eventually, she ended up at a nursing home in San Francisco. I think it was the Jewish Home for the Aged. I'm not sure if I have the name right, but she was there, and we visited her there. And that was a very different environment, and it got a lot harder. She started to forget more and more. The first few visits, she would sort of forget at the beginning, but after talking to her, she would light up, and she would remember us, and we'd have nice moments with her. But then over time, her decline kind of sped up. And I remember the last few visits walking into the nursing home, that kind of smell of chemicals and urine and those not so great smells of being in a skilled nursing facility. And she just stopped really remembering us. And it got to the point where not only didn't she remember us, but she actually would get ornery and almost hostile towards us because she was so confused. And it was just the later stages of dementia, and it wasn't fun. And by the time she passed away, many of you may be able to relate to this. It was almost a relief because we had already lost my grandmother, Sylvia Gilfix, many years before. And I get a little emotional even thinking about it now. But we had a wonderful life with her. So anyway, this was very personal to us. And Mike, I was the kid. I wasn't dealing with the logistics of this, but you have a deep and rich history helping families. We've helped hundreds of families navigate this on the legal side, but you've been involved in this world for many, many decades. And what was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, it's a real lesson. I started working with older Americans in the 70s. I went to Stanford Law School, started the first free legal aid program for elders in the nation in 1973, started working with these kinds of issues in the 70s when I was a kid. I mean, who does that? That was like really strange at the time. A number of us were very active in what was then the ADRDA, the Alzheimer's Disease and Related Disorders Association, which kind of predated by name the Alzheimer's Association. Dr. Gary Steinke in the county and a number of others. So I've been involved in this forever. There was the first book written about the topic was called Understanding Alzheimer's Disease in 1988. A woman named Miriam Aronson wrote it, and she had me write the chapter on legal planning. So from day one, when these issues were starting to be understood and discussed, and people were starting to plan, we were there, so deeply involved professionally. Well, when it was my mother, it's different. You can't be prepared. I mean, it is not the case that because we understand intellectually what to do and how to plan, it doesn't make it any easier when it's your own loved one, your own mother. So yeah, Mark did such a good job. It was very painful. We were supportive. My wife Mara was absolutely wonderful. The other kids, we did the best we could. I think we handled it well, but not without a whole lot of pain. So this underscores the value of the discussion that Rebecca is going to share with us today. You have to be able to talk about these things. It's more open. A last comment. 20, 30 years ago, it was infinitely more difficult to confront this topic and talk about it openly. It was like shunned or people were embarrassed. That's changed largely due to the work of the association. So we owe the Alzheimer's Association an incredible debt. So I'm eager to hear what Rebecca has to share with us today.
Yeah, well, on that note, let us introduce our co-presenter here today, Rebecca Steinberger. Rebecca is a member of the Alzheimer's Association community and outreach team. So Rebecca, why don't you go through how families can talk about this, what they need to know? I mean, I'm eager to learn more and to revisit all these issues. So Rebecca, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Mark and Michael. And can you guys hear me fairly well?
Yes.
Okay, so as Mark said, I am Rebecca Steinberger. I'm in San Francisco right now. I am a volunteer community educator with the wonderful and amazing Alzheimer's Association. I've been with them for about 7 years now. After I retired, I got involved with the organization. And I just want to share with you just for a little, just a minute about what led me to start volunteering for the organization, which was my personal connection to the disease. So when my younger sister, her name was Natalie, she was my only sister, we were extremely close. When she was about 48, 49, in her late 40s, she began having what we call warning signs of Alzheimer's or dementia, sort of red flags, changes in her memory, her thinking, her problem solving, her decision making that were very concerning for myself and our family. And when she was 52, she was officially diagnosed with younger onset Alzheimer's disease, and she passed away 7 years ago at age 57. And then my mom, who's 90, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease 5 years ago when she was 85. So the reason I share this with you is because even though I'm going to give you many, many tips about how to have these conversations about dementia, I'm also going to share with you some personal stories of what worked for me and my family and some that didn't work. So some of the most difficult conversations people say that they have when they're concerned about somebody who they care about or a loved one, when they're starting to exhibit these warning signs, or even when they first get the diagnosis, are these three areas. The first is going to the doctor. How do we get the person that we care about or our loved one to go to the doctor? This is a huge problem for many, many families. And I know that both Mark and Michael were alluding to this before, that denial, unfortunately, is huge in this disease. So many, many people don't want to go to the doctor. They're in denial that anything is wrong. We're going to talk about tips to address that. The second area is deciding when it's necessary to stop driving. Again, this is huge. As you all know, driving is very closely linked to independence. And if people can't drive anymore, they feel that their independence is being taken away. And we're going to talk about tips to get around that. And of course, making those legal and financial plans to cover future care needs. The future care needs of caring for somebody with Alzheimer's and dementia are exorbitant. And we're going to talk about how do we make those legal and financial plans early, when the person who has the diagnosis has enough language with which to tell you what they want for their future. So here are the goals. We're going to provide tips on how to, quote, break the ice and have those most difficult conversations, which these are these three right here. How do we break the ice? We're going to talk about helping plan ahead and building a care team that communicates well with each other. Nobody can do it alone. This is a journey. If in fact the person that you're caring about, your loved one, does in fact have this diagnosis of Alzheimer's or dementia, it takes a village. I mean, it really does. It really needs a team. And we're going to talk about that at the end, at the very end. We're also going to give you the opportunity to hear from people who are dealing with similar issues. So we do have video clips of people who have experienced how difficult this is and how they dealt with it. And I'll also talk about how I dealt with it with my sister and my mom. And then at the very, very end, as Mark said, I'll connect you with some very, very helpful resources that are available through the Alzheimer's Association. You'll find very, very helpful. So, on the left, you're going to see some things that you or somebody who has someone they care about or somebody that they're worried about who are concerned about their memory issues, sort of a barrier to what the person, which is the purple on the right, might be thinking or saying. So on the left, you might say to yourself, my sister or my mom or my dad lives close by and she can help. I don't really need to do anything. She can help. Or she's always been fiercely independent, and if I step in, she'll be offended that I said anything. Or, we're just starting to notice some changes. We're not even sure that there is a problem. In other words, maybe it's something else. I remember with my sister when we were noticing definite changes in her memory and her thinking. I would say, you know what, she's going through so much stress right now with her business and she's a single mom. I'm sure it's nothing. So those are barriers that keep us from having the conversation with the person that we're worried about. Then again, on the other side, the person who's experiencing those memory issues might say, oh, you're busy with your own life. You don't need to bother with me. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Or as my mother used to always say, wait until you're my age. Then you'll see there's nothing wrong with me. Things are a little harder than they used to be. So these are barriers that can lead us to have that really, really important conversation, but we need to have it. So we're going to go through 5 points of why it's so important and some tips to having those successful conversations. The first, and this is easier said than done, but it's definitely important, sooner is better than later. Don't wait for a crisis to happen. Don't wait for a car accident to happen because it was difficult for them to drive after they had the diagnosis. In my case, with my sister, I wished I had not waited to talk to her about it and get her to the doctor before all the past due notices for her bills were coming in and we were getting calls that the bills weren't paid. So sooner is better than later. Try really hard not to put it off. And then develop a plan for using finesse. It goes beyond being honest, and it really, really depends on the person and the nature of the relationship you have with that person and your family dynamics. But it's really important to develop a plan and to do it carefully so that you're not putting the person you care about or your loved one in a situation where they're going to become defensive and not want to listen to anything you have to say. So it's really important to plan ahead. Take notes about the changes that you see, not necessarily to share with the person because it can be very hurtful and alarming and the person will get on the defensive and you might see a lot of denial. But in my case, I like to take notes so that when I went to the doctor with the person or emailed the doctor ahead of time or spoke to the doctor, I had very specific notes of what was going on. So rather than, she just doesn't seem the same, or she missed a couple appointments, or everybody's just noticing that she seems like she's in a fog when she talks. My notes were very, very specific about dates. I would say she put her shoes on the wrong feet and didn't know that they were on the wrong feet. She didn't remember my birthday, which was a first. She always took my nephew, who was 12 at the time, to his friend's house, and she couldn't remember how to get home. It was 2 miles away, and she had done this for years. Really, really specific notes about the changes that you see can be really, really important. Practice in advance. I used to do this with my daughter when I wanted to talk to Natalie about going to the doctor and about not driving and about giving me, I talked about it with my mom about letting me get her financial situation in place, really practicing ahead of time. So I practiced with my daughter and she would say, you know, it's really good, Mom, but for Auntie Natalie, I would leave this part out a little bit. It's too much. I don't think she's going to be able to handle that right now. So it can really, really help to practice either with yourself in the mirror or with somebody that you know is going to be honest with you about what you're going to say, and somebody who knows the person as well. Talk with when you're both relaxed and comfortable. Again, this is going to be different for everybody. When I talked to my mom about getting all her financial papers in place, I did it when we were out for dinner at her favorite restaurant over a glass of wine. With my sister, we talked about it when we were sitting on the couch together watching her favorite TV show. So everybody's different and your relationship with the person is different. But when you're both relaxed and you're both comfortable is the best time to do it. So let's start with going to the doctor. Again, on the left are barriers to what needs to happen on the right. So you or your loved one could be afraid. They could be angry because they know something's going on and they're mad about it. And then Michael talked about the stigma, and this has changed significantly, but there is still a stigma out there about Alzheimer's and dementia, and people don't really understand it. It's better now, but I remember with Natalie, we never said the A word and we never said the D word. We never said Alzheimer's, we never said dementia. We used the M word, which was memory issues. And that was what she was able to accept more. So if I would say, Nat, yeah, you know, I told you we've talked about this a little bit, that I'm concerned a little bit about your memory. We're going to go check it out. But if I had said Alzheimer's or dementia, she would not have been receptive to going to the doctor. So fear, anger, stigma can all be barriers to getting a really good diagnosis, which is so important, and getting it early on. Getting checkups and getting medical help. I mean, maybe it's not dementia or Alzheimer's, maybe it's something else. Maybe there's some interaction with a new medication. Maybe it's some sort of vitamin that the person's taking. Maybe there's stress and anxiety going on that's causing memory issues to happen. So it's really, really important to get a good, early, accurate diagnosis, to get ongoing checkups, and to get medical help if needed. We're going to hear from Donna, and she's going to talk to us about her experience about getting help.
I think you have to be honest. I think that's the important thing with it. To get a loved one to the doctor, I think you just need to be candid and honest of what are you trying to do. We're trying to understand what we're up against. It's just so important to do that, because you can't battle something that you don't know what you're battling. Again, it may not have been Alzheimer's, it could have been depression, it could have been so many other things. And guess what? There's other things you can do to take care of those issues as well. But that's what you need to be able to do. You know, you can't ignore something, it's not going to go away.
Exactly. You can't ignore something that's not going to go away. And I'm going to stop for just a second, Mark, and make sure that you could hear Donna. Mark?
All good. Yeah, all good.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Here's some tips to help the conversation with trying to get the person that you're worried about to go to the doctor. Or even if your loved one or somebody that you're caring for or care about already has a diagnosis, they still might not want to go to the doctor, which was my case. And these are tips. And I want to preface this too with, these are tips that don't work for everybody. You might look at some of these and go, well, that's definitely not going to work for me. Or, you know, that's a really good idea. I think I'm going to try that. Remember that everybody's different. This disease affects everybody differently. Everybody has a different relationship. So it's really going to be important to pick and choose what you think might work for you. So the first one is use words that are most comfortable for the person. And I already told you with Natalie, we never used the A word or the D word, and what worked for her was memory. Now, my mom, she didn't mind the word dementia, so it was okay to use that word for her. So really think about what words are going to be less stigmatizing or less difficult for the person that you want to get to the doctor to hear. So I would never say neurologist to my mom. That to her sounded very, very serious, and she didn't understand it and caused her stress. I would just say, we're going to Dr. Janet. And she knew Janet. She went to her for a very, very long time. So that's what worked for her. So use words that are most comfortable for the person. Medicare has a free annual wellness visit that includes a cognitive exam along with the physical exam. So that's something you can say, oh, it's free. We do it every year. And they can go and they can also get some early screening for cognitive issues. I always did this. Pair an enjoyable outing with the doctor's visit. So Natalie was very adamant about not going to the doctor. You know, she knew at some level that something very serious was going on with her, and she never wanted to go. We always went to her favorite restaurant afterwards and got her favorite food, and it enabled her to be less resistant about going. So anything that your person really likes and enjoys, you can pair that with going to the doctor, and that can be very, very helpful to get them to go. Invite family to communicate their questions and concerns to the doctor. I did this with my nephew, and I did when his mom was experiencing this. Can you give me a list of things that you notice about your mom? And he would say, you know, she's having a hard time reading. She used to read all the time, and now I notice she's not reading anymore. Or she's asking me the same question over and over again. So inviting other members to join. And then with my mom, I asked her sister, my aunt, what do you notice differently? What's going on? I want to write this all down for the doctor, and that can be really, really helpful. This is one of my favorite strategies. If they're still reluctant to go and you've tried so many different things and they still won't go to the doctor, you can try using a therapeutic fib. Some people call it a loving lie. So it's basically a little white lie that's in their best interest that'll get them to go to the doctor. So my mom didn't have that much of a problem. I never had to do it. I would just say, it's time to go. But with Natalie, I would say, you know what? Your prescription's running out for your medicine. And can you believe it? They're making us go in again. They won't give it to us over the phone. We have to go. And she would go, oh, okay. You can also say, oh, it's your deductible. It's running out this year. We've got to go. Whatever you can think of that you think is going to work for the person. That's not absolutely the entire whole truth, can be very, very helpful to get them to go. And I use that strategy for many, many things that we can talk about in a bit. So driving is huge. Have you noticed accidents or traffic tickets or mistakes while driving or scrapes on the car? Here's what I didn't know this, and I know many people don't, are surprised when they hear this, that Alzheimer's disease and some of the dementias, they're not just a disease about, it's not just a disease that affects memory. It can also affect your vision and your peripheral vision. So I know with Natalie, when she was driving, it was hard for her to see the line, and she would start veering into the other side. So that is definitely one of the warning signs of Alzheimer's and dementia, and it can affect their driving definitely. We're going to hear from Chris, and he's going to talk about what it was like when he had to ask his dad to stop driving.
There's no exact answer on this is when you stop driving. You could tell when coming up to an intersection, as an example, the ability to understand what's going on around you was starting to deteriorate a little bit. Being on the highway with cars on both sides becomes a little bit more difficult. And first and foremost, the safety of everybody in the car, as well as other drivers on the road. You think about that, and you want to make sure you're not putting anybody in danger. But then the difficult part is telling your dad, who you love, and you know he loves driving, and he's used to it, that he can no longer do that. But then even then, taking the keys away full time was very difficult. The doctor was very helpful in just saying, medically, you can't do this anymore. But my mother had the hardest time with this because she knew how much this was going to hurt him as well. And this is one of the first things that we had to deal with as a family when it came to telling my dad that he had to stop doing something because of this disease. That meant a lot to him.
That's a really, really challenging issue for many, many families. Let's talk about some tips that might work for many of you if this is something that you're dealing with. Plan ahead, of course, plan ahead before an accident occurs. As soon as we noticed Natalie going into the other lane, I pulled over to the side and I started driving, and she was happy to stop driving, but that's usually not the case with most people. But really do it before you notice that something might be different going on with your driving ability. Express your concern about the specific changes that you've noticed in a very calm, respectful, gentle, empathetic way if you can. So with my sister, I'd say, Nat, you know what? I'm noticing, and Aaron, your son has noticed too, some scratches on the car. I think it's been tricky to get in and out of the garage, and I'm a little bit concerned about that. So in a very gentle way, letting them know what the changes are that you've noticed about their driving. This worked for me. Appeal to the person's sense of responsibility and concern for others. So I would say both to, it was much more difficult for my mom, because my mom, who's fiercely independent, would say, I'm a really good driver. Ask anybody. I'm a great driver. I'm the best driver of all my friends. Well, she was a terrible driver. But I would say, Mom, you don't want to hurt somebody. What if you accidentally were driving and you bumped into another car and the person got hurt? With my sister, who was an incredible animal lover, I would say, Nat, what if you hit a cat on the road? That would be awful. So sometimes you can appeal to the person's sense of responsibility, and that can help them understand that it's time to stop driving in some cases. We're going to hear from Sheila, and she's going to talk about how she talked to her dad about issues with driving.
Some tips on having the conversation is pointing out, especially for my father, the potential danger to others that it may cause if he's behind the wheel. And, you know, just talking about it from the standpoint that this is not only the best thing for you, but this is also the best thing for others around you. And these are some of the alternatives, making sure that, you know, this is what's going to happen, having a plan. You know, if mom can't take you, then Uncle Thomas or some, you know, will be here to take you, and we will make sure that you're getting out of the house and that you're doing some things. So, you know, presenting the bad news, but then also presenting the plan. And for my father, that's really, really important to have a plan.
Yeah, and for most people, we just don't want to say, you're not driving, that's it, we're taking the keys away, and leave them hanging like that. So back to the tips. Offer alternative plans for transportation, just what Sheila was saying. So for Natalie, I would take her a bunch of places if I could. I was still working. And I would also try to pick up my nephew from school, but we had to hire, we were lucky enough to be able to hire somebody to do some driving for her, grocery shopping and such. And also, we're going to talk about this in a bit when we talk about developing a care plan, but I had some family members and some of her close friends take a day to take her to places that she really liked to go. She loved to go thrift store shopping. She needed to go see my nephew's soccer games. So really making sure that you're not keeping them at home because they can't drive anymore. So really important to get an alternative way for them to get places. Sometimes this will work. It worked for me with my mom. Incorporate the voice of an esteemed professional and have empathy as much as you can. So there was no way, as I said before, Natalie, it was fine with her to stop driving. With my mom, it was a real struggle and caused a lot of stress and anxiety in our family. So what I finally did, I remember I told her she loved Dr. Janet. So I emailed Dr. Janet ahead of time. I told her what was going on. So when my mom went to her appointment, I didn't tell my mom that Janet was going to say this, but she sat down with her. I will never forget. She put her hand on my mom's arm and she said, Leah, you know your daughter loves you, right? Yes, of course I do. And she wants you to stop driving because she's worried something might happen to you or somebody else because you're driving. This happens typically when people age and when people start to have some memory issues like you do. And I care about you. I've seen you for a long time and it's time to stop. And I couldn't believe it. My mom said, okay. So she wouldn't do it for us, but she would do it for her when her doctor told her. So this can be a strategy that can be helpful, not always, but can be helpful for some people to actually give up the keys. And then in terms of therapeutic fibbing, what we talked about with getting to the doctor, that can be applied to any difficult situation. So I know some people have said, oh, the car's in the garage. I don't know when it's going to be done. You know how long it takes them to fix the car. There's something going on. They think it's the transmission, or, so the car's in the shop, or, oh, I've got to renew the insurance and I've got to fill out the paperwork. So anything you can think of to get them to not be behind the wheel driving is what needs to happen. And of course, again, that's going to look different for everybody and every relationship. And we're going to talk about Wendy, and this is such an important video. I love this one. She's going to talk about the need to use empathy to help with the conversation, and not just help with driving, but with any conversation, I think.
Talking to somebody about stopping driving, I think it's most important to understand that that is tied to someone's independence more than most things. And so by saying you can't do this anymore is like telling the person, it's like ripping away their independence. And that doesn't feel good for anybody. I know that I've always tried to put myself in that situation. What would I think if someone was saying this to me? You don't get to do this anymore. And how would I feel? And how would I want somebody to talk to me about this? And so if you try to I think sometimes too many people try to approach it as, very punitive. And I'm doing what's right for you. So why don't you understand, without really turning the tables and putting themselves in that position, understanding, how helpless that feels to take those things away. It's important to be thoughtful about what that experience is like for the individual.
Exactly. Really important, as much as you can, to be empathetic and gentle. Okay, so we've talked about how to have the conversation about driving, and we're going to move on to legal and financial planning. And before we talk about some tips that might work for you, we're going to hear from Chris. He's going to talk about his situation dealing with the financial costs of Alzheimer's and dementia.
Financially, this disease will increase the cost of living. It's just a fact. So planning for those extra costs is that much more important than what you were planning for before. And so you have to review everything that's in place, see what changes need to be made, both legally and financially, and you have to monitor that going forward afterwards too.
Okay. Here's some things that you might feel when you're trying to have the conversation about legal and financial planning with the person that you care about, or your loved one that has this diagnosis. You're going to feel reluctant to do it. You might feel uncomfortable. You might feel that it's intrusive, or in some families, you might feel that it's very disrespectful to talk about money. And in my case, when I had also, my dad had Parkinson's disease, and in his last year before he passed away, he had Parkinson's related dementia. So I've experienced this with my dad and my mom. And I have to tell you, I felt all of these things, especially in my family. And some of you might be from similar families where the parents don't discuss financial issues or any legal or financial planning or monetary issues with their children. And this was the case in my family. And I felt all of these things because of that. However, it is really important when they get this diagnosis, you've got to talk about it. And you all know this already. So we're going to hear from Julie. She's going to give it, this is her on the video, giving advice to her friends who have a lot of anxiety, like I did, about having that financial conversation.
Here's what I've come to after all of this. That it's the most loving and kind thing you can do for them is to be honest with them and say, this is like a really scary thing. And I feel a lot of discomfort bringing this up to you. But you know, I tell them, if you're going to be the one who's going to take them on this journey, then you have to tell them, I'm going to be here on this journey with you. And there are things that we have to do to get this in place. We're going to go on this journey together. I've told you I'm going to be here with you till the end, so let's get this ready. It's like we're going to go on an ocean ship. We've got to get things packed up. We've got to figure out what we're taking with us. We got to get ready. And the things that we have to get ready, we have to make sure that we know which doctors you're going to be using. I need to get this signed, okay, so that if you go in there and they have to do surgery, for example, I got to have this durable power of attorney for health care for you. I have to have this worked out, okay? Now, if for some reason, okay, you need to go to rehab after something, I have to have these documents here, the financial stuff, so I can get these things taken care of for you while this is going on. I don't want to have anything get in the way of us being able to progress and keep doing this. I said, it seems hard because it's hard in our heads. You know, everybody's read about people who've stolen from elderly people, who've done these horrible things. But if you're the person who's approaching this with loving kindness and compassion, and you're willing to take this person on this journey, you're not doing a bad thing. You're doing the right thing by talking to them about it. And you approach it from the standpoint of, I'm here for you. I'm doing this for you. We're going to do this together. And I'm going to help you through this. And these are the tools that I need to make sure that we can do this.
I love that video. And I love how she says, we're in this together. I'm not doing it in spite of you and for you, in place of you. We are on this journey together. I love that she says that. So here's some tips to help with the conversation for legal and financial planning. Some might work for you, some not. See what you think. We just said this, Julie said it, I said it. Begin by explaining that you're in this together. Start by asking questions and gathering documents. And this goes along with, I'm going to put these all up because I think they all kind of go together. So for the second one, start by asking questions and gathering documents. So just rather than, for the fourth one, break the conversation into parts and try different times and locations. To me, that's very similar to the second one. Start by asking questions and gathering documents, not all at once, rather than, okay, I want to see all your files. I want to see all your financial information. I want to see your checkbook, show me your banks, you know. That can be incredibly overwhelming for everybody. So just start by asking simple questions, gathering a couple things in the beginning so it's not overwhelming. Explain that these are like Julie just said, explain that these are standard plans that need to be made as we get older. I mean, mom and dad, this is what happens to everybody. We all need to sit down and figure out what's gonna go on as you're getting older. Everybody does this. It's important, and all the things Julie just said. I care about you, and we're gonna go and do this together. Breaking the conversation into parts. Try different times and different locations. Again, it's really important not to overwhelm the person, and involve others as needed. In my family, I was really lucky that my cousin, his name is Mark, my cousin Mark was also an attorney, a financial planning attorney, and did a lot of this. And he got on board and helped us with a lot of the issues with both my sister and my mom. Sometimes if you can hire somebody, like all of you are involved in that right now because you work with Mark and Michael. So involve others as needed, even friends that might be able to give you some financial or legal planning advice, and pull other people in. So last but not least, we talked about this earlier, nobody can do this alone. It usually starts with the family, that's the center. And then usually after that, there's the medical team. People usually start with their primary care physician. And then once if there is a diagnosis made, you will continue to see other professionals such as neurologists or social workers. There's other people that'll be on the medical team, but usually it starts with the primary care physician. And then, of course, if you can, it can be really, really helpful to bring peers in. I told you earlier with Natalie, she had a friend from high school, a friend from college, and two coworkers, and my cousin Marcia, who was who they were very close. And they signed up to be with her when she couldn't be alone. They signed up in the beginning, in the early stage, to take her places, go out for lunch, go on a walk. With my mom, same thing. She had her friends who she played mahjong with, and even when she couldn't play mahjong anymore because she couldn't remember how to play, they would come over every once in a while. They'd take her somewhere for me. So if you can pull peers in, it can be really, really helpful, a helpful part of your team. Sometimes you can pull people in from the workplace, and there's many programs that can allow you to do this. And I know Mark and Michael can give you tips on that. And there's so many community resources out there, which brings us to the wonderful Alzheimer's Association. So there are many, many ways that you can contact them to get support. Well, first of all, you have Michael right there, who's very involved, and he can help you out. Also, you can go to the alz.org There's a navigator, there's a resource finder, there's a website called All's Connected, where you can get on there and talk to other people who might be going through what you're going through. There's a caregiver center, there's a safety center, and then this wonderful 24/7 helpline. They're open 24 hours, 7 days a week, 800-272-3900. Any question that you might have about Alzheimer's, dementia, support groups, other trainings, medications, if they can't answer it, they will refer you to somebody who can. And then on the right side, there's alz.org/find us. You can get tons of information. And then trainings. There are free online education programs available. Either call the helpline or go to training.alz.org. And I was talking about this with Mark earlier before we started the training, that the Alzheimer's Association provides so many extremely valuable trainings. In addition to this one, we do Understanding Alzheimer's and Dementia, which is an overall training that discusses, it's an overview basically of what Alzheimer's and dementia is, and goes through the difference between those two terms, and talks about medications and resources. And it's a really nice overview training. Then there's, I told you earlier, I was talking about it with Mark and Michael, the 10 warning signs. What are these symptoms? What if you notice any of the 10 symptoms in yourself or in somebody else, what do you do and what to look for? There's this one, conversations. There's also 2 trainings we do for caregivers specifically. One is called Effective Communication Strategies. So how can we interact with the person that we love, care about, or who we're caregiving for, to make the interactions more positive? And then understanding and responding to dementia-related behaviors. In the middle and late stage, sometimes people with Alzheimer's and dementia will start exhibiting some challenging behaviors. Not always, but sometimes. And how do we deal with that? How can we interact with that person to reduce those behaviors from occurring? And how can we interact with them effectively? And then there's legal planning. There's trainings that are, there's my favorite one, healthy living for your brain and body. And that goes into the strategies to help us age in a way that can reduce our risk of cognitive decline. And those of you that might be here today, like me, if you have a sibling or a parent that has or has had Alzheimer's and dementia, you're at twice as likely, you have a much greater risk to develop the disease. So this training goes through physical health and exercise, staying cognitively stimulated, like you're all doing today. You're participating in this training, not being socially isolated, staying socially engaged, thinking about your diet, the Mediterranean diet, getting enough sleep. So it really goes into how we can reduce our risk for cognitive decline. So those are great trainings that I highly recommend. Either Mark or Michael, you might want to provide those in the future to your group, or for those of you that are interested. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, no, this is amazing. So yeah, we do plan on doing some future talks with you, Rebecca, and the Alzheimer's Association. I think we'll talk about what, if you have thoughts about this, contact our firm if you have other resources you want to talk about. And I want to thank you so much, Rebecca. This was amazing. So I think that 24-hour helpline is incredible. And I do just want to, just before we wrap up, actually, Rebecca, any other thoughts before I share?
Well, I think I have 2 more. I have 1 more slide. Just remember, nobody can provide all of the support alone. I think that this slide is intentionally put as a closing because it is so important. So many people try to go on this journey by themselves, and it's really difficult to do the whole thing on your own. Try to form a care team, talk with family members, call the helpline, and really have the conversation. If you have anyone in your life that you might be concerned about, talk about it. And now we're open for questions. And Mark, I'm going to stop sharing my slides.
Yeah, no, thank you again so much. And I'm gonna, we are amazing. We're so proud of our history at the Alzheimer's Association, and thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I'm just gonna share a couple. We are lawyers, and where we can help is the legal planning side. And so just really quickly, the legal steps that Rebecca, you talked about, we have been that legal advisor to hundreds of families dealing with this. And the key legal steps, make sure you have a sophisticated, durable power of attorney that's up to date. That's the document where you can empower people who can help you with day-to-day financial issues, applying for government benefits, because the cost can be $15,000 a month or more in some cases. There are Medi-Cal, Medicaid in other states can be available to pay the cost of care, but you need to make sure you're situated to get those benefits. Do you have the power to do that? Do you have the power to manage bills, to manage day-to-day financial issues? Do you have an advanced healthcare directive, as that video talked about before? What if you're in the hospital or your loved one, are you even authorized to help, to talk to doctors? If they don't have an advanced directive in place, you can't. So we need to make sure, if you have a loved one dealing with this, or if you're worried about this, you need to have an up-to-date, sophisticated, durable power of attorney done by an expert who understands this. Simple documents often come up short when you're dealing with this. We've helped hundreds of families through this. A check-the-box form is not enough. Make sure the advanced directive is up to date. Make sure the trusts in the estate plan is up to date. And just the ways that we can help on the legal side is talk to us if you're concerned about that. Contact us at gilfix.com. We can walk you through the legal steps on a step-by-step basis and help connect you with the Alzheimer's Association. We need to coordinate with financial advisors. It's not simple, but the stakes are so high. This is about autonomy. As Rebecca talked about, this isn't about taking away someone's rights. This is the opposite. This is about helping someone to make the decisions they want, to empower people they love, to step in to help them as they go down this very challenging path. And we can be part of that. And so much money is at stake. You know, if you have the right documents in place and can help your loved one become eligible for Medi-Cal, that can save literally hundreds of thousands of dollars. If we don't have the right documents in place, we even can't do that. So you need to have your plan up to date. And one thing I just want to point out, you know, Rebecca, you made this point, do not delay. When we talk about the 3Ds, danger of delay and denial, don't let that happen. Have these conversations that Rebecca talked about. Use the tips that she brought up to massage the however you need to do it. Talk about it. Set those meetings with us and your other advisor, your care team. Don't do it alone. Let's get this done before it's too late. Because if someone has dementia, it's a progressive disease. There is a point where they cannot update legal documents anymore. But it's often later than you think. We can still act. Often when people think it may be too late, it often isn't. But work with us. We can review someone's plan. We can review your plan, even if you've worked with us in the past. So make sure your plan is up to date. And of course, you know, the way you can contact us, subscribe to our Gilfix Law YouTube channel if you haven't. We have a number of talks about how to pay the cost of long-term care. Mike and I wrote a book called Facing the Reality of Long-Term Care. It's available to all our clients for free. You can purchase it through our office. We think about this all the time. We dealt with it ourselves. We can help you. Contact us, 650-493-8070 or gilfix.com/my-needs. But take charge before it's too late. Mike, any thoughts before we wrap up and maybe just take a question or two?
You know, my main observation, Rebecca did such a great job of talking about the resources that she brought to bear for her sister, Natalie. You know, frankly, very few people have that much of a team. It made me think about so many of our clients who are isolated, or they have one family member and they just don't have that kind of support. So, you know, that underscores the need to work with and take advantage of organizations like the Alzheimer's Association, where you can find support groups, where there's so many resources available. So, you know, God bless Rebecca and her family for what was done for her sister and her mother. And there's the model. That's how it should be done. And we facilitated so many. But, you know, we also know you don't always have those resources. So knowing how to pay the cost of care, quality care, how do you go about planning? We've been around that block hundreds and hundreds of times. And last comment, you know, Rebecca made reference to having the esteemed professional get somebody to accept advice. Yeah, hey, believe it or not, we've been used in that way many times. Yeah. Mike will tell you what you need to do. They don't say he's esteemed, but you know, that's implicit. So we play many roles. We do what we have to do.
Yeah, and you are not alone. We can be part of your care team. Let the Alzheimer's Association be a part of that as well. They have incredible resources. And I just don't work with inexperienced people around this on the legal or financial side. It needs to be an elder law attorney who really understands these issues. That's what we live and breathe. It always pains me when people said, oh, you know, my buddy who's a business law attorney helped me with these documents a few years ago. It's like, you just have to live and breathe this to understand it. And that's what we do. And so we would love to help you and your family out. So you can, of course, find us at gilfix.com, subscribe to our Gilfix Law YouTube channel, subscribe to this, like this video, share it. If there's anybody in your circles who can benefit from this, so many people are ignorant and never get that help. We want to make sure that doesn't happen. Follow our channel for more information. We look forward to more presentations with Rebecca and with the Alzheimer's Association team. And Rebecca, any closing thoughts before we wrap this up?
Yes, I think Mark and Michael, you two should be a duo and volunteer to give trainings through the Alzheimer's Association.
Rebecca, we're doing that.
Okay, fine.
We're in. Yes. So I love it. So this is the start of what I hope will be a series of talks with Rebecca and the Alzheimer's Association. So hope everybody out there is staying, as my mom likes to say, safe, sane, and healthy. Let's all have a wonderful holiday season. And we and the Alzheimer's Association are here as a resource and can be part of your team. So let's all stay healthy and take care.